Hello everyone and welcome to our latest hit of Rugby Nation. I'm Sean Maloney, that's Iain Payten. Back in the middle after a long absence. We have missed you fella after your gold-blooded tour, your classic Wallabies at the weekend. Justin Harrison, you got around. How's the body? You had a hit out.
The body's okay. It's a bit of paper mache. I feel a bit like a Lego man at the moment, just holding myself together. I did try and make a tackle in the match in Rockhampton and I felt like I'd exploded every part of my body.
Front on or from the side?
I think I actually tripped over, so I don't know which side I hit, but something hit me.
Were you playing fullback? The male was you were playing fullback,
or
the wing one.
I was
that's
playing
where you
reserve touch judge at some
You had,
stages.
but you had guys had a full classic Wallabies outfit.
Absolutely.
Run us through some of the names you had.
Oh, we had a whole gamut. We had some new inductees: Mark Connors, Matty Cobain, Stephen Morph, local Rocky boy, done good. Mayor of Rockhampton, he told us. Got us nothing. DK, Andrew Walker, Stephen Hoyle, Sean Hardman,
Lockie Turner.
Proper team.
Yeah, proper team. Over 600 Test caps, over 1,200 Super Rugby caps running around.
Probably the strongest classic Wallabies team in, I would say, probably ever.
Yeah.
That's full.
Yeah, I think it's just a sign, and blokes were ringing up to get involved and to find out what the schedule was and can they help and assist, and that's a real change in the groundswell of support, and it's just a real recognition that there is an eagerness there to engage community rugby, and most certainly the Rockhampton faithful came out in droves. Some people making 300-kilometre round trips to come to the event and just put an arm around each other and create a new rugby story together.
Give us the 30-second summary of the gold-blooded tour. How's it going?
Fantastic. It's some of the best engagement that we've had for a long time. People are getting tactile with the sport. There's enjoyment and energy in that space. And actually all of the stories coming out are not retrospectively lamenting the fact that we haven't won enough test matches in that high performance space. They're talking about the stories that they've all got and what the wonderful binding agent that rugby is for every community in rural Australia.
Just back to Rocky very quickly. Is Bundy the predominant drink of choice in Rocky?
Is it on tap?
I think anything that's available seems to be the predominant choice up there. They're certainly well hydrated over the weekend.
Nice one. Oh, mate, it's good to have you back. You're doing terrific things around the country on that front. So too the classic Wallabies. Where did you guys watch the game from Johannesburg? 1 a.m. Did you make it to 1 a.m? And if you did, where were you and what were your thoughts? We
watched it at the local Rockhampton Sports Club, and we were all lined up there. Everyone was looking forward to the match. Certainly some conversations around it, and some expectation on performance, some excitement about some of the new additions. Clearly disappointment at the result, but I think collectively we did see enough there to give us some energy moving into this test window, and then looking to build on that. The important thing is to improve, right? So next week we're looking to see those blokes that were brought into the squad lead the squad instead of us be surprised by them playing like test players. And then the other players that took the field, understanding that fixing those mistakes is very easy to do.
We've got on the notes here, written out the notes, what went wrong and what went right. Maybe we should start with the what went right, just to add a ounce of positivity to Australian rugby chat. No, I thought Nick White was excellent. There have been question marks about this sort of strategy of bringing blokes back from Europe, but he was fantastic and showed he has actually developed his game a lot since he's been away. A really good distributor. Isi Naisarani was another great addition, and I reckon you're going to see that guy. Yeah. Been looking for a number 8 for a long time, and he looks like he's fit the bill. If Poe comes back and he's fit, and they do throw the Pooper combination back out there, Naisarani could be a 6. So those two things were, those two guys were really good, and they almost got over the line a bunch of times. Now you can say that's a negative, but it's you look at that in a team and view it as a positive. If Dane Hallett-Petty gets that ball over and one or two other opportunities, you could have been talking about a different game. So there's some positives.
Yeah, look, I think importantly the team selection was, I wouldn't say it was adventurous, but was certainly intentional. It's the first time we've seen a team selected to play a certain style of game, and we saw that in the game. There's plenty of opportunities created. The attack was endeavourous. without being necessarily efficient. But most certainly there was a pattern of play and a style of play being displayed against what was a well-organised rush defence, right? That was the key to probably South Africa's success. That rush defence really did put us under a fair bit of pressure. Naisarani, absolutely. Some of his actions in and around the ball and energy and physicality were good. His control at the back of the scrum, I think we all agree, probably needs to improve. Nick White, decision-making, clearly benefiting from playing in the Northern Hemisphere, right? The difference between Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere is that delivery of breakdown ball. Very messy in the Northern Hemisphere. So when you're in a game, you're getting dominated in the tackle, you're getting caught behind the advantage line, which is what was happening in the test. Getting a halfback in there to get the ball and not stand back and wait for it on a silver platter was a great advantage for us. So Whitey's definitely helped us there. Creating opportunities. Opportunities only arrive if you create them. Finishing them, of course, is what we need to concentrate on. That's sport, right? Bounce of the ball, all that sort of stuff.
It is, or a drop of a ball, which would have been, like you say, the big turning point, 15-14, and they could have gone up in the shadows of halftime. Yeah. For the real baseline rugby fans, can you explain to them, and to me as well, what style of play were the Wallabies looking to engage on the weekend?
Well, I think you saw, and probably to the detriment to some extent, with a rush defence, there's a lot of interaction between just forwards. We didn't look to go behind as much as we typically do, and have in the Super Rugby competition. So a lot of the forwards previously Super Comps and Test matches are forward with a tip outside him, a pass option outside and inside. Will go back behind to a back line that's already behind the game line. We saw a lot of in and around breakdown, tipping. We saw the ball. Pelly touched the ball a lot, even with a rush defence, which means that they're using the entirety of the back line. Very limited kicking. Crossfield kicks were very limited. The only real kicking we saw was kick to touch for field advantage, or Nick White making very good decisions to relieve pressure. So the kicking model was different. Typically we see long kicks in high altitude that land on grass. So I think confrontational style of game, a lot of ball movement, and most definitely better controlled by Nick White to get the ball out to the back line. Which is rugby, really, isn't it?
Well, having heard that summary,
through, like game plan, style of play, identity is something that they speak about as a team a lot as well. And I just think sometimes punters at home and they just go, well, what does that mean? Even sometimes I go, what does that mean?
I felt like, I don't know the game as well as Goog, obviously, but I felt like you're talking about them going out the back. I felt like they did that too much early. It feels like sometimes they get caught. It's like a training run. Someone summarised it well that feels like that they're on a training run and they get surprised by the intensity of the opposition defence coming at them occasionally. And then I guess just a failure to adapt to it. I thought some of the best work they did was when they had forwards coming in and around the ruck, some angled runs back in off White, and that try from Beale was some nice movement, trying to exploit the defenders around the ruck. And maybe if you've got criticism of the Wallabies, it's an inability to, use plan A, B and C all within a test match. It feels like they go out there with a way they want to play and don't necessarily adapt to what they see in the game. And some of the skill execution was just not there either. It's tough under a defensive speed and pressure that we saw, but just passes going behind the man. And I think there was a moment there where Reece Hodge had a nice open run up the line and it went straight behind him. And they were carrying the ball loosely, handing it back to the opposition in that second half far too often. So there's being outplayed and then there's beating yourself. I think there was a bit of both in that test.
The reality is no one will remember the first up game of Rugby Championship. If the Wallabies go deep at the World Cup, it'll be out the back door. Is there enough there, though, ahead of this weekend against Argentina? Actually, we'll get to this weekend. Let's firstly just quickly wrap up what played out over in Argentina as well, so that we can set ourselves up for what's to come at Suncorp. They went down narrowly 20-16. They've never beaten the All Blacks. I didn't realise that they'd never actually jagged at 28 years of going at each other. Never put a W on the nose of the All Blacks. They went close at the weekend. 2016 full-time, 29 was the score at half-time.
Yeah, I think you saw an Argentinian side that clearly played a mirror of what they've done with the Super campaign, the Jaguares. Confrontational, well organised in defence, very physical and actually quite disciplined, which has always been a surprise with the European man tends to lose his head a lot easier than most, but they're well drilled. But that's you can't play one style of game against the All Blacks. But I think we all understand that, and that's probably the danger that Argentina have now. People are starting to talk, have they peaked? They probably haven't peaked, but what they do need to do is discover a different style of game. And I'm remembering Argentina against Ireland in the World Cup. The way they played that game was completely different to what they've presented through the Super Campaign and in that first test against New Zealand. So,
have they gone too far away from what used to make them? They used to turn up at every World Cup and beat very good teams based on the fact no one knew exactly what they were going to do. Now they've turned into a very strong team, but Crusaders got the job done. All Blacks, that was the best chance the Pumas had in a long time to beat the All Blacks. That wasn't a strong All Blacks team, but still they got the job done. Have we seen them go too far away, do you think?
Yeah, and that's the danger, right? That's the Achilles heel that possibly got to Melbourne Rebels during the year. They had a clear style and they played that week in, week out, and perhaps that became a bit too much like a formula. And Argentina certainly, and that's the difference, right? The All Blacks play very similar style of game every time, but what they're very good at is creating one-on-ones, which is where you get your unpredictability. Argentinian style of game is pods of three forwards, backs running straight and hard, very aggressive defensive line and immaculate set piece. That's just an attritional game that relies on one error and not several little moving parts, which is what the All Blacks were good at creating.
So that sets up this week and some changes you would think to come from an Aussie perspective, because there are a number of guys who came back out of South Africa to get set for this weekend, resting some niggles. Christian Lealiifano was one of those guys. Where does he end up this weekend?
There will be changes. If you throw back 4 years to 2015, I went and looked this up the other day. Checker made 6+ changes each week to the starting team.
Through the Rugby Championship.
Okay. Debatable whether you still should be trialling people at this late stage, but they do. They want to sort of time their run into a World Cup and work on combinations. The fellas that are in form. Speaking of which, Christian Lealiifano, the form 5'8" of Australian rugby, had a minor niggle last week, I believe. Look, if he's fit, you can expect to see him play, I would have thought. Bernard Foley had a very Bernard Foley performance. Probably, one of the focuses of criticism, no matter whether Australia do well or not. But Christian deserves his shot, right? And I think that he could add something to the Australian team. One of the things that confused me was having Samu Kerevi and Tavita both at 12 and 13, and we saw plenty of Samu, but Tavita Kirandrani was barely sighted. I think he had 5 runs for 3 metres or 3 runs for 5 metres or something like that. So they just didn't get him into the game enough. And Christian
it's very difficult when they're rush defence, right?
Yeah.
13, they'll cut off 12-13 channel exceptionally well, which is why close to ruck started working. When rush defence is the outside's up.
But you see the Brumbies do well, you see Tavita coming up, running lines almost at the 10.
Even coming in off line-outs.
Yeah, exactly. And Elton Jantjies was just not made to do enough tackling.
And I think one of the terms I'll pick up on, you were saying, trialling players is the right thing to be doing. And I think the difference between historically the squads and it very, very much has been a trial scenario. I think this is more a rewarding scenario, right? Players are forcing their way into that side.
Yeah.
We agree that blokes are going to have earned that jersey and that opportunity. So what we've got here is a much more competitive squad, which has got to be a positive, And of course, then you've got to put it on the dirt. But to have people coming into test jerseys that deserve test jerseys,
very true.
That's a major difference in energy moving into these test matches.
In 2015, it was only 2 tests out from the World Cup that they played Hooper and Pocock together, and that was a sensation at the World Cup. So that's definitely a part of what you're saying.
Look, we know what a great organiser Christian Lealiifano is, and what he did with the Brumbies, and the ability to change the style of game sometimes during game with the Brumbies. That's what we saw, right? So I think that and that alludes to the fact of adjusting to what's in front of you. So there's huge excitement about what Brussie's going to bring to that environment.
Potential to see James O'Connor return to the park as well at Suncorp. Last saw him cutting around with the Queensland Reds there a couple of years back. It's tough to
that's the talk.
Potential to go back in. Where do you think Jock would play if given a shot?
Well, I mean, that's the interesting question, right? They're talking about him as a 12, but I'd really like to see Samu get some more game time. He'd be one of the guys I reckon you'd just roll through every game. So bench, maybe coming on second half, having a look at him in the last 20 minutes, in the centres there somewhere. Look, I'm not of the school of thought that you just disregard this rugby championship entirely. You have to get some wins on the board. If you don't have that, you don't have momentum. Everyone forgets, yes, we trialled a lot in 2015, but we won 3 out of 4 in that little campaign, including a win over the All Blacks. So that, I don't doubt, had some impact on the way that they went at the World Cup too. So there's a balancing act there. I think they've got to get a win on the board, the Wallabies, and this is one where you want to get it done.
No, look, James O'Connor, great skill set. We all know his entry and exit story to the Australian environment. And that's not. The thing about sport is that it has little regard for history, and sport offers a great redemption story, right? Intrinsically, human nature is forgiving normally, right? You can only get so many times at bat before you lose it. But so let's forget about is he the same bloke and is he going to go out on the gas after the test. Let's talk about what he can offer to that environment. He offers competitiveness. He's another player in that mix with a superb skill set, and he's put his hand up to say, I want to play 12. So this bloke knows what he wants, and he's worked hard to get it. That's got to be good for that environment, and that's going to keep Samu Kerevi making sure that he's got his foot on the gas, heading through and not thinking about, QF Japan.
Well, I like the idea of... this opens up another topic of discussion, but Kurtley Beale's impact off the bench last week was just eye-popping, I thought. And it shows the value of having guys like that on the bench. Now, we're going to see Kurtley probably come into a starting team in this test or the next. I wrote it the other day, I'd really like to see Beale considered as that bench impact guy at the World Cup. Just because his electricity is, it works 10 times as well against guys with tired legs. You could honestly get 2 or 3 tries out of him in the last half hour and win games that way.
Sparkling injection. It was round the corner ball.
And people forget how good he was at the World Cup in 2015 in that role. It gave him the shits. He didn't like it, but it was a great role for him. If you end up seeing Beale in the starting team, maybe O'Connor plays that role. The guy who comes on and brings something when the game is just grinding down a bit and you need guys with light feet targeting heavy forwards. So that's perhaps where James could potentially fill a role as well.
They're going to be tough to roll, though. Argentina, can't forget that last year they popped the Aussies on the Gold Coast.
Did they?
And went close to... Yeah.
I'd rob that one from the memory.
It shouldn't have been a loss, but it was in the end for the Wallabies. And then on the flip side, Australia just got it done late against them. Over there last year, they rattled home in the second half to put away Argentina. So they'll be good. Speaking of good, the Wallaroos...
Which was one of the best second half comebacks.
Which is some of the best rugby I've seen from an Australian team in a long, long time.
These boys can play.
Yeah. Do you think Lucan's mate will come to watch the test this year?
From the Goldie? I wouldn't if I was him. I would not be fronting anywhere near the Suncorp Stadium. So the Wallabies were good in that second half last year. Hopefully they can repeat it this year. So too were the Wallaroos last Friday night at North Sydney Oval. I got out there, I took the little one out. I was with a group of people, in fact, that made the trip to North Sydney Oval. Had a great night. It was good atmosphere, good crowd, and the Wallaroos were very polished in putting away Japan for a second time in 2 weeks.
It was a ripper night. I think there was 3,500 or something like that at the game, which is a good number at North Sydney Oval. What impressed me? Obviously, the Wallaroos got the job done. They're looking better and better every time they play. But that Japan team, honestly, how courageous is that Japan team? They're all 4 foot nothing. Like you talk about rugby league, every player looks the same size, pretty much. You couldn't pick the props from the halfbacks in that team. They were. So they didn't. They had no rights to be, tackling and running as hard as they were, but they went all game. It majorly impressed me, which added to the quality of the Wallaroos' performance, I thought.
Player of the match for a second week running, Grace Hamilton, who scored a couple of tries. The opening try was an absolute ripper. I actually spoke to her at length last week, and she was saying how well the squad's ticking along at the moment, and they're loving having Stephen Larkham around as well. They can't get enough of Bernie. How about that?
Yeah, but it's been
putting
great,
some polish on the game.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's huge IP and rugby knowledge, and it'd be crazy not to utilise it. But I think the shift in women's rugby now is that, instead of being surprised by seeing skill level and ferocity and physicality, we're now seeing an elite product on the field, and that resonates, right? That's a clear pathway for women. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the world. There's heaps of touch points that are great. But it's not just the emotion of it now, and everyone gets a ribbon scenario that it used to be. It's now a genuine test selection.
And I think people expect more of them as well. Like
That's
people
right.
are fronted up on Friday night going, "This is time to see some. This is a test match.
It's entertainment.
I want a proper test match, and I want quality." And they got it in spades, and they got it for 2 weeks running in spades, and they get it again over at Optus Stadium when the Wallaroos take on the New Zealand women's side, the Black Ferns.
North Sydney Oval. How good?
Yeah.
Oh, best ever. North Sydney Oval, greatest.
Stu Wormsley, who we all know, our great photographer, wrote a really nice post the other day saying how Wallaroos, women's rugby's in that sweet spot, right? There will come a time when we just regard the Wallaroos as another professional team. We demand a win, and we will analyse them as such. But they're at a point where it's still new. That's the first home victories they've ever had. That's the first home series that they've had that's not a New Zealand opponent. So those girls were loving life, loving it. A lot of them were saying this has been the best couple of weeks of my life.
Avril Mitchell last week, the hooker.
So there's that nice mix, that nice blend of like just pure joy with the high performance side. There's a really nice blend there at the moment, and it's great to watch. And things will escalate now when they play the Black Ferns, and that's a totally different kettle of fish as far as an opponent goes. Japan, as we say, they play a very low tackling style. They're all quite short. The Kiwi girls are much bigger and play, around the ruck and use their size.
Well, they're just better, right?
Yeah, that's right. They're the world champions.
Yeah, they understand rugby. They're a bit better at it.
But France have beaten them twice in a row and beat them in the Super Series again earlier this month. So Dwayne Nestor said, "Yep, we'll have a good old look at that tape. They're the world champions, number one in the world for a reason. We respect them, but France showed us that they can be beat.
They can be rolled." Speaking of feel-good stuff around those suburban grounds, I just want to touch on Manly v Warringah last weekend.
I knew we'd go there.
How can I not? Did you guys see the pictures?
Yeah, we did.
Between 8 and 10,000 at Rat Park at the weekend. It continues to be the marquee club rugby match nationwide. Scintillating game of footy, and I've just got to show you this offload from Manly Marlins hooker Aaron Blacklock. This has got to be one of the best offloads we'll see all year long. Doesn't matter what level. This is ridiculous from Blacklock. In the end, the Manly boys went down. They'll play finals, no problem. So too will the Rats. But guys, I look at that and my heart gets so warm. It looks so good. The optics of that are incredible. And if we can just roll that out. That good feeling, that love, like the classic Wallabies have.
Well, yeah.
Shoot Shield and Wallaroos, things are going to be okay.
That goes to Goog's point, doesn't it? We obsess about the very top of the game far too much here, and rugby's in great shape and loved greatly at many, many levels.
So when I see pictures like that out of Rat Park, fellas, just makes me feel so good, again, about the code. It kind of makes the Wallabies loss a little easier to take. Just knowing that that's what's bubbling along under the surface is awesome.
Well, community's still engaged in rugby, right? There's wonderful stories across the park in rugby, and the headline, of course, is the national product, and that's our flagship. But there is an underbelly of support and a willingness to commit resource and emotion into that space. Carmichael Hunt playing for Gordon, kids queuing up for signatures, players playing, in the change room, seeing what a professional player does to get ready for a game. There's that transfer of intellectual property, the history that he's got, and we've got to find a model that presents an opportunity for players when they're in or out of form or not selected to have a presence at their nominated clubs. And it's not just the strongest, most financially backed nominated clubs across the board. Maybe instigate an origin series, right? Where'd you start your rugby, right? When you're not in test windows or super campaigns and you're coming back from injury, you play for that club, and it's part of your contract. So it doesn't get outside the CBA or
club footy
like
at the moment, when the Wallabies play, club footy at the moment is singing, right? You've got all the pros back in there. NRC hasn't started yet. Tony Pulu scored an absolute screamer
down in Canberra.
Down in the Canberra comp. Up in Brisbane, you had all those Reds boys playing. The 20s, Fraser McWright, all those guys. Jordan Petaia came back from injury. So, yeah, there's a lot of good footy being played, and people have a great deal of love for it. Gordon, you bring it up. Gordon are one of the great emerging stories. They came last in the comp last year. They took on
Darren Coleman.
They had
Darren
one win.
Coleman's the super
They had
coach.
one win over Penrith.
He's a shield whisperer.
Yeah.
That's
He
what
is,
they call
he
it.
is.
Just comes in.
They're running
Blows
fifth.
his magic on
They're
tap.
running fifth. He told me at the start of the year at the season launch. I said, oh, well, for last to first, that can be done, like joking around. He goes, mate, I'm not going to say it can't be done. I think blah, 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 blah. And everyone sort of rolled the eyes. Good on you, DC. But
know that here's a fun fact. DC was actually my first ever rugby coach.
Yeah.
I didn't listen to a word he told me, which is why I went on and did something worthwhile in rugby. But he was my first rugby coach at the Gold Rats University.
How old
Club.
was he? He's not an old man.
He was the youngest coach I've ever had as well. I think he was a day older than me.
Yeah.
But I was a baby rat, and he was the first grader guy doing sports education up there, degree. And I was under 19 baby rat player, first game of rugby. I didn't manage to get much training done because I was getting sent on punishment laps by him all the time for mucking around. But then we ended up becoming teammates, and the journey started.
Isn't it nice?
Off-field too, DC.
Yeah.
I don't mind saying. He wouldn't mind me saying he's pretty handy off-field as well as with a whistle in his hand.
He's got a rich tapestry of rugby experience.
Yes, he does.
Can we?
He's putting it to good use at the moment.
We can't fail to mention one of the great stories last week too, the Harry Johnson Holmes call-up. Speaking
I'll let
of
you
club
round out
rugby,
that.
I mean everyone's probably heard it. He was tucking into a $8 schnitzel.
My local.
I don't think that pricing is correct.
The Lord Dudley in the middle of Paddington.
$8 for a schnitzel.
Lord Dudley's my local. It is approximately 13 steps from my front door on the way there, about 45 on the way home. But Tuesday night is $8 snitty night.
Yeah, and can I just say that's also.
This slide, and I don't want this cut out either.
Yeah.
I need to know, is that legit chicken breast or is it the processed one? Because at those profit margins, you're going under within
particularly
a week.
Particularly in the middle of Paddington.
Yeah.
I promise you, I was there on Tuesday night because I didn't know and ordered a snitty. It is the real deal.
Right.
And I can eat, right?
I
like to eat,
can.
and I know
we can both. Does that come with a sauce, mushroom or pepper?
You got a choice of a sauce.
How much
you
extra?
None. Sauce included.
Chips
mate.
and
It's
salad
$8.
as well?
Yes.
This is ridiculous.
$8.
And he was sitting there just punching
Tucking
$8
in, got a call, got a missed call.
Monday nights
He'd be a
is
mushroom sauce guy, Harry Johnson
$15 pie night. Like you can do. So one thing you can do in Paddo, right? If you're a bachelor or if your wife's currently away, is travel around every night of the week and pick up a special, right? Four in Hand's got a roast special on Sunday.
Right.
Snitty night Tuesday, locked and loaded.
That's going nowhere.
Mate,
Get two.
Bellevue Wednesday night's got like a salmon plate thing that they do for $7, mate. I'm picking up the 5 food groups and every single beer in the neighbourhood. How good?
Well, as someone, you hit the nail on the head. At $8, there's no doubt that Harry Johnson Holmes doubled up. It was
Yeah.
a
It's a
$16.
no-brainer.
So he's sitting there eating an $8 schnitzel. Check rings him and says you're in.
Standard
you're in.
missed calls. No one
Classic.
answers the number. They don't respond.
Rings
Call
back.
it back. Checker, you're in. Put
You're
the
up.
schnitty down. You're up.
Just push the mushy sauce out the side. Get on the plane. You come over.
And I love Harry Johnson Holmes. He's a battler from Newcastle. Great entertainer.
Good set of tonsils on him.
Tells a great tale.
And he did well, right?
And he did well. That's
Carried
the thing.
strong.
Yeah.
Never puts a foot wrong. There's a guy at the start of the year, due to Tom Robertson's injury. People were going, oh, geez, can this bloke actually start in Super Rugby? I'm not sure that the Waratahs front. He hasn't put a foot wrong.
He can play.
And we're going to see a lot more of that bloke in gold.
Good on him.
Fingers crossed. Geez, you could belt the anthem when they get a win too. He'd just be locking in behind him. He's got the voice of an angel, Harry Johnson.
He does.
Known
Is
singer.
he?
Oh,
Is
mate.
he like Omar?
Proper
Remember
singer.
Omar Hassanein?
I know Omar very well.
Opera singer.
Yeah.
Right.
No, not Omar Hassanein. Sorry,
I know him.
Omar, the prop that I played with, who I should know, the Argentinian prop. Speaking of Argentinians,
It'll come to you.
yeah,
We'll hit
well
that
done,
next
good,
week.
good story.
Speaking of
And then the bus left.
All right.
last story before we go. Argentina are going to play Randwick.
Hassan,
as a-
Omar Hassan,
Okay. You're
which
close.
is why
Yes.
extra.
Not
Yes.
close. Pumas have said that they're going to play Randwick in a warm-up for the World Cup. They're going to go into camp at Coogee. 31 years after Randwick played the All Blacks, they're going to have a crack.
Proper game.
Proper game.
Legit game.
Legit game.
Oh, phenomenal.
Right, so we're clearly going to recruit every single security guard in the Randwick area to play against them and
That's
injure
right.
every single one of them.
Well, we won't be
one of the
putting Adam
greatest
Fryer out on
ideas never to happen again.
Can we give Adam Fryer one last job?
Mate, we've got to get Hassie on that game. He's got to play.
He'll get folded.
Well, listen, a life ban at age 39, you're laughing. So
Yeah,
just
true.
go in and do
nuts.
some damage.
All right, we'll see how they go this weekend. We'll see how they go against the weeks in weeks coming as well. Right now, that is a wrap from Rugby Nation. We'll catch you all again, same time, same place next week.